Tom, thank you so much for joining me on the GSI briefing.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me.
So let's jump into the issues and talk first about legislative matters and the lame duck session that just wrapped up. First, of course, I want to congratulate you, along with your colleagues, for sustaining the sunsetting of the corporate business tax surcharge. I know it's been a primary goal of the chambers, frankly, as well as here at GSI as well, for a number of years. And Governor Murphy has been really great about holding firm in his commitment
Yes.
that surcharge sunsetting, and doing so, ensuring we no longer have the highest corporate tax in the U.S. But of course, Tom, there are forces in Trenton as well as outside who just aren't really letting it go. So how confident are you, Tom, that we've really won this fight?
This will appear again. I'm fairly confident that the surcharge will be back on the table. As many people in Trenton have told me, we are looking at two very challenging budget cycles coming up. The state has a lot of committed expense, and revenues are not as robust as thought. And we don't have the federal money coming in to support the lack of internally generated revenue. So revenues are challenged, expenses are up. Something's got to happen to make that a balanced budget. And that's why I am almost certain we will hear again some momentum for the surcharge.
Under that surcharge, we had the highest corporate tax rate in the
Correct.
U.S. And you've been great. You know, under your leadership, the chamber has been clear in articulating a vision for the state. And in fact, post-election at the end of last year, your message to the chamber members, you outlined a 6-point legislative agenda that you want to pursue in Trenton. You have the goal of making New Jersey a better place for your members to run their businesses, as well as your employees to live and raise their families. So can you talk about those 6 points and how you intend to make progress in moving those forward?
So our 6-point agenda was done with some practical ideas that are doable, that will help get us on the path to becoming more affordable and business friendly. And the 6 points are the following. The state still has a very large surplus, and the business community right now is being saddled with about $1 billion plus of expense to replenish the unemployment trust fund. We would like some of that, if not all of that money, all that deficit to be funded by the surplus, because it would take a huge amount of expense off the backs of the business community. It goes right to the heart of the affordability issue. And by the way, most states around the country, I think between 35, 36 states, have used the surplus money they got from the federal government to replenish their unemployment trust fund.
Right.
So that's one item. The second one is there's still a lot of pain in the business community, pain in the form of working capital. Without working capital, companies can't survive. And working capital comes from a couple of sources, usually from profits generated by the company, capital put in by the owners, or possibly bank loans. All of those potential sources are being challenged. There are no federal programs, there are no state programs. Like there were during COVID, like the PPP plan, which really helped the business community survive. There are none of those in place right now. So we've asked the state, basically the EDA, to grant a very significant grant fund, put a very significant grant fund in place to help any business anywhere in the state of New Jersey access money to survive. And that's point number 2 in our, not necessarily in the order of preference, but point number 2 of the 6. Point number 3 goes right to the heart of business friendliness, which is the GEAR Commission. The Christie administration, as you well know, had the Red Tape Commission, which worked very well in eliminating duplicative policies that really hindered the business community. That went away with the Murphy administration. Early on in the Murphy administration, the Assembly and the Senate voted unanimously to put together the GEAR Commission to really bring back the old Red Tape Commission, but the governor vetoed it. I have brought this up to the governor. He seems receptive to looking at this again. So we are calling for the legislature to reintroduce the Gear Commission for the governor's consideration, which would help the businesses in New Jersey get past a lot of things that are in their place that are policy driven that really hinders the growth of business. The fourth thing is include more minority businesses in state contracting, include more minority business in the supply chain of large corporations in New Jersey to get these minority businesses more business and to engage all the people that have tremendous talent in all these minority businesses a chance to move forward and grow. There's enormous potential there. It helps the state in many different ways, and we are encouraging the state government to open up their contracting to do this. There is I believe it's a mandate to have 30% of state contracts with minority businesses. Right now, the amount of minority business and state contracts is 3%.
Yeah,
So there's
I think
enormous
the veterans are in kind of the same position as well, right?
veteran. Well, I include them in the diversity as a small diversity organization and business. So a lot of room to grow, and a lot of room to really meet the mandate that's out there. So that's the fourth thing. The fifth thing, which is probably the one thing that I would put at the top of the list for my wishes, is for the state to put together an economic council. The state of New Jersey has a council or a task force on every issue that seems to pop up in the state. I don't know how people have time to meet, if they do meet, but we have more task forces and councils than I could even begin to list. But we never had an economic council where the governor's office, the legislative leadership, and the business community sit on a regular basis just to talk about what's going on in the state, what the issues are, what the hurdles are, what we need to address to make it better for the business community and grow the revenue that we need. We've never had that. And I think it's just so logical in a state like New Jersey that has so much economic potential. Why don't we have a council like that meets and talks? And I'm not talking about having meetings where we, scream and yell at each other and have disagreements about everything. Just talking about putting things on the table that would help everybody and try to find a consensus way to get to those issues and make them better. If
you don't mind, if you and I have talked about that, and I agree with you 100%. And I think the characteristic that's so important is that it meets regularly. It's not ad hoc.
Correct.
It's not, when available. Yes. It's got a regular meeting. I think it's a great idea, Tom. I hope it is able to get started this year.
And when I talk about regularly, I'm talking about 3 or 4 times a year. With Zoom, it's easy to do. I would hope that the meetings would be in person, but Zoom obviously makes it a lot easier to do. And it would mean a lot to everybody if that were to happen. So let's hope that gets some traction. And lastly, which I guess is involved with that meeting, is the whole issue of civil discourse. I am tired of reading all the time about the critical conversations and the criticism and the language used to criticize and vilify different parts of our state by different groups. For instance, the CBT issue, the CBT surcharge, where the business community, the large corporations who were being taxed were called tax cheats. They were called greedy. They had endless negative names by different groups, which are all totally untrue. And that's just part of what the lack of civil discourse has brought to the table in New Jersey. And the issue that I brought up in a conversation with the governor when I had a fireside chat with him in June, he agrees with having more civil discourse. So I brought that on the table and said, Governor, I agree with you 100%. But to have civil discourse, you have to start with discourse. And that's when I brought up the Economic Council. That's discourse. So if we could have that in place and have those meetings be constructive, the civil discourse would kick in, and I think have a twofold impact to benefit the business-friendly nature of New Jersey. So those are my 6 points, and I would tell you that none of them have a cost, because the money for the grant fund, the money for the unemployment trust fund, that money is already there. I mean, and not being used for any productive purpose. So there's a real benefit to putting that money to a productive use. The other things cost nothing. So all 6 of these would be things that could be done with a stroke of a pen, with the legislature, and then put on the governor's desk. So to me, they all make sense. They can be done, and they would lead to a much better, a much more affordable New Jersey, and really help with the business-friendly nature of our state and our business-friendly reputation.
You know, the governor just addressed the opening session of our new legislature, which included 37 new members, which I think is the most we've had in a very, very long time.
It's a record.
It is a record. Okay, good. So in every State of the State address is brimming with forward-looking ideas and expectations for the year ahead. For the business community, Tom, what did you hear in Governor Murphy's remarks that you see advancing that agenda that you just laid out?
There wasn't a lot of talk about business issues. It was more social issues and some of the progressive discussions that the governor has promoted over the past few years. The positive for me in his State of the State address was his ongoing optimism for the state of New Jersey. I mean, if you can't have the state move forward in a positive way if the leader isn't optimistic. You can agree or disagree with what he says, but the fact that he is optimistic is a plus. And he and I have had disagreements on policy issues. I have never had a problem with what he's trying to do, because what he's trying to do, what you're trying to do, what I'm trying to do are all one and the same. And that is make this state a great place, the great place it should be. And we just have different ways of getting there. So to me, the fact that he was positive and he promoted some new initiatives like the AI initiative, which I guess is related to the business community, because AI is going to be something that everybody is going to deal with. It's going to be a great opportunity for people. It's going to be a great threat for people. And we have to find a way to walk that tightrope and put it to good use in New Jersey and make sure that we benefit from it and not get hurt by it. So that is one thing that he is taking the lead on with Princeton University. And they want to establish not only a nationwide AI institute, a leadership position, but a worldwide leadership in AI. And if you get Princeton University involved, which they are, you have a good chance of getting that kind of head start. So to get their involvement and to get their buy-in and be part of this is a huge plus and opens up enormous potential. The governor kept mentioning working together, working together, working together. And working together, I think we can make things happen. But the one thing that I said in my response to his State of the State was we have to find a way to have organic, stable, reliable income in the state, because the surplus we have that's carrying the state right now economically is going to go away. And we need to find a funding source to balance our budget that is not punitive. What I mean by non-punitive is you can't go back to the same people and continue to tax them more, because that's going to make our hole even deeper and prevent us from achieving our potential. So the way to do that is to promote the business community. Find ways to, again, attack the affordability issue for business, attack the business-friendly nature, our reputation as far as being business-friendly, and support more legislative ideas that help move the business community forward. If we can keep the companies here that are here, encourage them to grow in the state of New Jersey, and then with that, help attract more companies to the state of New Jersey, the ensuing revenue from their profits, them hiring people, those individuals paying taxes, those people buying products in the state of New Jersey, it helps the state in so many ways. So I don't know, Regina, of any other way to have a reliable, sustainable, organic source of revenue than to build the business community. And that would be the foundation of our economy and the foundation of the new revenue we could generate to support the growing budgets that we keep seeing.
Well, to the point, boy, you really, it's a perfect segue to just getting a little bit more into the budget discussion for the state, if we can, Tom. And with the lack of, new federal revenue sources and the use of the current surplus to fund the operation, you're referring really to what's commonly called the fiscal cliff, or Jerry Scharfenberger called the fiscal time bomb. One truth does remain, that you have to live within your means. And that's really what you're starting to talk about, I think. And as you just referenced, right, spending over the last 6 years has increased 54%, but personal income of our residents has gone up only 24%. Glad it's gone up 24%, and that's a terrific, a statement to be able to make. But it's not sustainable in terms of, the legislature having a appetite to spend, and the governor appetite to spend, and the taxpayers' capacity to pay. So is there anything, any ideas that you've got? I mean, I agree with you. It's got to be organic growth and attracting businesses. And what do you see as I think the challenge, and you referenced at the very top of the show, you referenced this challenge over the next 2 years, especially in the budget cycles. How do you see that really playing out?
Well, let me take a step back. The revenue cliff is a real dilemma, because that's coming. When we had the election in November, and the Democrats really pulled an upset. I mean, they thought they were going to lose seats. They gained seats. There was a polling done of people leaving the voters leaving the voting booths. The first and second issues that the voting public said that came out of the voting booths were, they were driven by the affordability of the state and the economy of the state, not the social issues that keep popping up about school curriculum and women's rights, which are all important. But the two drivers that they had overwhelmingly prompted whatever vote they made was affordability and the economy. And then, lo and behold, what were the first two things that came up through our legislature right after those statements were made? One, let's continue with the CBT surcharge. And number two, they decided to enhance and lower the requirement for paid family leave from companies with 30 employees down to 5, both of which negatively impacted affordability, and both of which would have definite negative impacts on the economy. I don't understand why the legislature doesn't read the tea leaves and see what the voting public said, because they are giving us the support for the argument we're making. So everything is pointing to attacking affordability and the economy, and but nothing legislatively is pointing that way. So we're going to be using that information and those foundational pieces as arguments going forward in our testimony, and I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to testify on a lot of things that are going to pop up in the new legislative session, especially the reintroduction of the CBT surcharge. Sooner or later, I would hope that the legislature would get the hint and start to move off the agenda they're on and move more toward achieving the economic potential we have by supporting the business community. If they don't, God help us, because I don't know where we're going to get the funding to support the growing budgets.
So one other I know, high pressure on terms of spending, and a slightly different subject, but very related to the economy, is New Jersey Transit. So I'd appreciate, and I know our audience would, Tom, kind of hearing your thoughts on the state of New Jersey Transit, because I know it's so essential to both commerce and employment. And I don't know if you read, I recently authored an op-ed responding to a great article in northjersey.com. And I basically said that it's clearly an agency run amok. And I say that because, they're staring down the barrel of nearly a $1 billion shortfall in 26. That's less than 2 years away for such a large organization. But they continue to spend as if they're steeped in reserves. So, excuse the pun, Tom, but really, are we watching a train wreck, or how do you see this?
First of all, the infrastructure of our state, which includes New Jersey Transit, is the foundation of our economy. It is by far the one of the biggest assets we have between New Jersey Transit, the highway system, the ports, everything. We have the best infrastructure in the country, but it's got to be healthy and it's got to work well to maximize the potential and maximize the support it gives to the business community. New Jersey Transit, and just so you're aware, I've led the last 4 infrastructure initiatives in New Jersey to Washington, and I chaired the last TTF renewal about 6 years ago. And it is so vital to our state that it needs to get addressed. The governor has said he's going to fix New Jersey Transit unless it kills him. I think based on recent recent things he said, he is definitely not pleased with where he has got New Jersey Transit. He's been critical of himself, which is I give him credit for. New Jersey Transit, I don't know the answer to their problems. I don't know if they have looked at how they can become more efficient, which means cut costs. I don't know if that's a possibility. But obviously, when you have bleeding like they're having, everything should be looked at, including every dollar they spend. There was an old economic axiom called zero-based budgeting, which is, you decide, you start from zero and say, what do we actually need to spend and why? Maybe that's a process they need to go through. So any problem that is caused or is inherent in any business should be something that's solved by the business without trying to first go to some outside source. Exhaust all internal possibilities first.
A classic, I think example of managing the expense side, which, I think needs more focus, is thinking about how their customer profile has changed, how business needs have changed, right? It's not really a Monday to Friday 3-hour peak period anymore, and modifying and be more flexible about when people really need to use transit versus when it's much lower demand and therefore, a lower provision of service would be perfectly acceptable. And I think just thinking about where business is headed as opposed to where they've been is a great first step.
Yep, I agree. I think it's a vital part of our state, and I don't know, with all the good people that work there and the great minds in the state of New Jersey, why a path to solving the deficit problem is not in place. It baffles me that not only is it a path to solving the deficit problem not in place, the path is a growing deficit.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of good minds in New Jersey. Maybe my comment about having a sit down with an economic council type approach would be a good way to do it, to get, I know they have hearings about this, but hearings are hearings, and you've been to hearings and I've been to hearings, and a hearing is, yes, they hear you, but how effective are the proposals made by the people that are talking at those hearings? I've never seen a lot of real action taken by any organization based on what people say at the hearings. It's nice to have them, but is it really effective? I have my doubts.
Yeah, well, we've covered a lot of subjects, Tom, and these aren't all going to get solved, to your point earlier in our conversation, in 1 year. This is a commitment I know many of us have to improving the state over time, but, very deliberately, to your point. Let's stop, just talking and bring a lot of action to it. So Tom Bracken, CEO of New Jersey's Chamber of Commerce, thank you so much for joining the GSI briefing, and we look forward to hearing your progress and having you back later this year.
Regina, thanks for inviting me. I enjoyed it.